This video is sponsored by NordVPN. I'm a television junkie, and when I heard that streaming contracts were coming between me and my addiction, I knew something had to be done. Then my partner told me about the magic of NordVPN. Prior to getting a VPN, watching the US version of The Office on Netflix was like a geography joke. You just had to be there. But now, even though the American Netflix doesn't have it anymore, I can easily use NordVPN to circumvent those pesky streaming rights. And with one-click connect, I can go straight to the UK version of Netflix, which, besides hosting the US version of The Office, also streams a ton of TV shows and films that I normally would not have access to here in the States. NordVPN allows you to safely and securely route your IP address through almost any country, so geography limitations are a thing of the past. If I'm not trying to fool a website's location tracker for television or shopping purposes, and I just want to browse my normal content securely and without privacy concerns or location tracking, I can quick connect to the closest and fastest server and browse without fear of privacy breaches or data mining. As you can see, a VPN works both ways, always, every day, using the reliable and secure power of over 5,400 servers located in 59 countries. Go to nordvpn.com/Merc or use coupon code MERC to get an amazing and affordable deal on a 2-year plan. Plus, our viewers will get 1 bonus month upon sign-up. Thanks again to NordVPN for sponsoring this video. Lori Nesson was a 15-year-old teenager who lived with her mother on the east side of Columbus, Ohio. She was a sophomore at Eastmore High School. On September 27, 1974, Lori left her house to go to a high school football game and then went to a party afterwards. She would never make it home that night. When Lori didn't arrive at home, her mother contacted police. A police search was immediately carried out. Lori was last seen leaving the party and heading home after midnight. The following day, on September 28, 1974, Lori's nude body would be found in a roadside ditch alongside Rose Hill Road in Reynoldsburg, 5 miles from where she was last seen. Her clothes were found scattered across several miles. Her cause of death was unable to be determined. Police tried everything to find her killer, but with little to no leads, the case soon grew cold. The case would remain cold for 45 years. Then, in August 2019, Lori's family urged the Reynoldsburg police to re-examine the case. The Reynoldsburg police agreed and asked the Franklin County coroner to reevaluate Lori's autopsy. In 2020, a local TV channel called 10 TV featured Lori's case and asked anyone with any information to come forward. After seeing the segment on TV, a viewer contacted police and told them that Lori's case had similarities with the death of the viewer's own cousin, Karen Adams. Karen Adams was a 17-year-old girl who went missing in March of 1975, approximately 6 months after Lori went missing. Her body would be found in a ditch on Wingert Road in Blacklick, Ohio. Karen's case would also go cold. But in 2011, the investigators reopened the case. The investigators sent DNA samples retrieved from Karen's crime scene to the Bureau of Criminal Investigation. Soon, DNA matched up to 2 individuals, 72-year-old Robert Meyer and Charles Weber. Robert Meyer was arrested and questioned. At first, Robert denied any involvement in Karen's murder. However, in 2012, while in prison, he admitted to killing Karen. He told investigators that he would prowl for women, abduct them, sexually assault them, and then kill them. He was sentenced to 15 years to life in May of 2012. After Karen's cousin tipped off police about the possible connection between Karen and Lori's murder, the police were able to link Robert Meyer and Charles Weber to Lori's murder using DNA profiles in March of 2021. Both Robert and Charles, however, were already deceased. They both had extensive criminal histories. Robert was convicted in 1963 and spent 10 years in prison, where he met Charles, who was also serving time. Both would be freed in the early 1970s. The duo would again be arrested and charged for the kidnapping, assault, and attempted murder of 2 other women in the Northwest Ohio area. In 1977, both were convicted for crimes and imprisoned. Charles died in prison in 1993, while Robert was freed in 2001 and remained free until 2011, when he was finally charged in prison for Karen Adams' murder. He died in prison a few years later. The case was finally solved after 46 years. While both perpetrators have now been positively and conclusively identified, their deaths prior to the complete convictions for the totality of their crimes leave a hole in the hearts of family and friends of those victimized. On December 20th, 1976, a dismembered body of a female was found in Carbon County, Pennsylvania, near Interstate 80 by the bank of Lehigh River. The woman had been sexually assaulted and strangled to death. In what some detectives called overkill, after her death, the victim was then shot in the neck. During the autopsy, it was determined that the victim was in fact 9 months pregnant, and her nearly full-term unborn child had also died during the attack. The victim's body had been dismembered with a serrated blade. Her ears, nose, and breasts were severed and have never been recovered. Her other severed body parts were found inside 3 suitcases, along with the fetus that had been removed before the dismemberment. 2 of the suitcases were striped with red, blue, and white, while the other was tan with a plaid design. The suitcase handles had been removed and appeared to have been spray-painted black at some point. 1 suitcase contained her torso, the second contained her arms and legs, and the third contained her head and fetus. The police believe that the suitcases were thrown out of a moving vehicle into the Lehigh River below. The killer had probably hoped the suitcases would sink in the water. However, one of the suitcases ended up on the riverbank. A 14-year-old boy found the suitcase with the remains in it while playing near the river's edge. Police soon found the other 2 suitcases in the woods, about 20 feet away from the riverbank. The police took the body to Gnadenhutten Hospital for examination. On December 23, 1976, after 3 hours of examination, it was determined that the victim had been a white female in her late teenage years, or possibly early 20s. She was pregnant with a daughter who seemed to have been due any day prior to her untimely death. The victim's identity was unable to be determined, and she was named Beth Doe by police. The victim's fingerprints were taken and were submitted to the FBI. However, it did not match anyone in the national database. Her teeth were examined and recorded in dental records. A composite sketch of the victim was made and was distributed throughout the country. However, no credible leads could be found. She was buried in 1983 under the name Beth Doe. In 2007, her body was exhumed for further forensic analysis, and a new facial reconstruction was also made. However, police were unable to match it to any missing person. In November of 2020, Beth Doe's DNA was entered into a public database of genetic genealogy. Soon, familial DNA eventually led investigators to the victim's nephew, Luis Colon Jr. Luis put police in touch with other family members, including the victim's brother. On March 31, 2021, Beth Doe was finally identified as Evan Colon. In 1976, Evelyn was living with her then-boyfriend, 19-year-old Luis Sierra. Her family said in 1976, when Evelyn was 8 or 9 months pregnant with Luis's baby, they lost all contact with her. They said that in December of 1976, they had visited Evelyn's apartment in Jersey City, New Jersey, where she stayed with Luis. But after reaching the apartment, they found it abandoned, and they soon received a letter stating that the couple had moved to Connecticut and that Evelyn had delivered her daughter and was happy. The letter said that she would contact them if she needed anything. The family, thinking Evelyn had decided to live her own life, did not file a missing persons report. The family told investigators that Luis was abusive and jealous towards Evelyn, and often kept her locked inside the apartment. Evelyn even told her mother that she feared Luis, and that if anything happened to her, then Luis was likely involved. After decades of uncertainty on both the part of investigators and family alike, Evelyn's body received an official marker with her true name. Evelyn's identification brought to light the identity of her baby, who never got a chance to live but was nevertheless already named and loved. The name her mother had chosen for her in happier days was Emily Grace, and her identification was finally able to be added to the gravesite next to the name of the only adult that she ever knew, her first and only home, her mother. Luis was arrested and charged with murder. At the time of his arrest, he was 63 years old and residing in Ozone Park, New York. He is being held without bail and is awaiting extradition to Pennsylvania for Evelyn's murder. No other details regarding his arrest have been made public. In November of 1980, an archaeologist digging in a remote part of the Mojave Desert found the bodies of 2 victims, a male and a female. Both had been killed and buried in a shallow grave a few miles east of Ludlow, California. They were found nude and had no identification on them. An autopsy revealed that they had died from a combination of gunshot wounds and blunt force trauma. The coroner determined the victims had been killed and buried 6 to 8 months before they were found. Both were believed to be in their 20s when they died. The police utilized all their resources to try and identify the victims for years, but to no avail. Meanwhile, investigators were able to find a potential suspect in the case. Howard Neal was a Ludlow resident and had left the town soon after the murders. He reportedly moved to Mississippi, where he was charged for murdering his brother, his 13-year-old niece, and his niece's 12-year-old friend in 1981. In February of 1982, Howard was convicted and sentenced to death for the murders. However, 8 years later, his sentence was overturned and changed to a triple life sentence after an IQ test conducted on Howard showed that he had a low enough IQ to indicate that he was borderline mentally disabled. The police tried to interview Howard multiple times throughout the years, but Howard's attorney refused all requests for interviews. But, privately, his attorney did inform the police that they did not have to look any further for a suspect in the Ludlow murders. In 2017, the investigators were finally able to interview Howard. During his interview, he confessed to the Ludlow murders. He told investigators that the 2 victims were hitchhiking on Highway 66 and he had picked them up. He then took them to his house where he tried to sleep with the female victim. This resulted in an argument between Howard and the male victim. Howard then shot and killed the male. He then sexually assaulted the female and killed her as well. He then buried their bodies in a shallow grave in an isolated area off of Highway 66. Howard, however, did not know much about the victims. He did mention that the female may have been from Arkansas and may have had a daughter that she had left behind to travel across the country. He could not provide any information about the male other than he looked like a, quote, hippie. In 2018, Christine Marie Sally, who lived in Virginia, hired a private investigator to find her biological parents. The private investigator submitted her DNA to the GED Match database. In December of 2020, her DNA finally matched with the DNA of the female Ludlow victim, which had been submitted by the police a few years prior. The match indicated that the victim was most likely the mother of Christine Marie Sally. Christine told the investigators that the adoption papers obtained by the private investigators had her biological mother's name, Pamela Diane Duffy. The investigators then submitted another sample of Christine's DNA, along with the female victim's DNA, to the California Department of Justice, who confirmed that the female victim was indeed Christine's mother. The female victim was finally identified as Pamela Diane Duffy. Christine told investigators that she learned before that her mother had gone missing. She recalls that her mother had been associated with a man known as Digger's Lane. She also told the investigators that the man had served time in a Virginia prison. Her mother had plans to travel across the country with him after he was released from prison in 1979. However, after going through the database, the police were unable to find a man by the name of Digger's Lane. With the help of Virginia State Police, they were able to narrow down the list to one person who matched the criteria. The person's name was William Everett Lane, but there was no information that he went by the name Digger. His arrest records included his home address, which led police to several of his family members. William's mother submitted a DNA sample, and in April of 2021, the male victim was finally confirmed to be William Everett Lane. The victims were finally given their rightful names, and the case was solved after 42 years.